Hey,
Ah, there we are. Hello, sir.
how are you?
Good. How are you? Hi,
Good.
everybody. This is Josh with Jacksonville EcoTour Adventures. We are live today with Bryan Bedrosian of the Teton Raptor Center. Looks like you're at your office here in Jackson. EcoTour Adventures actually used to share the same building with you guys, so we definitely miss getting to hop in and say hello now that we've moved to a bigger office. But
Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't be in this office if it wasn't for Jackson Hole Eco Tour Adventures sharing the space with us initially. So,
yeah.
yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining. I think people are going to be trickling in over the next little bit. What we're going to do today is we are going to talk about golden eagles of the Jackson Hole area and beyond with Bryan. Bryan's the research director at the Raptor Center, the Teton Raptor Center. He's been studying raptors and ravens in Wyoming for the past 19 years. Um, Projects ranging from learning about the little tiny flammulated owl in Wyoming to tracking golden eagles all the way from the Arctic down to Mexico. Bryan's, you can probably see some of the things behind him there, but he's really an expert in designing and fabricating new tools for raptor research, ranging from making remote net launchers to transmitters that they can wear on their backs to acoustic recorders. We may be able to see some of those things today. Bryan's got over 20 peer-reviewed publications of his work and has pioneered research on linking lead poisoning in eagles to gut piles from hunter-harvested deer and elk. And yeah, few people in the world have harvested or have handled, excuse me,
I hope not
hunter-harvested
harvested.
deer and elk, have handled more ravens, great gray owls, golden eagles, or bald eagles than Bryan. So we're gonna hear from Bryan on some of those experiences. So thank you for joining us, Bryan.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to share some of our experiences of what we do in the research world and why we do it.
Yeah, and for those of you that are joining us, please take a look at the Teton Raptor Center at Teton Raptor Center. We'll definitely give them a follow, um, and let us know if you have questions in the comments. We're going to be going over a couple of topics, but we'd love to know if you're curious to learn anything about um, golden eagles or any of the other work or birds that the Teton Raptor Center and Bryan have been working on. Um, Another quick thing, this is the giving period right now for Old Bill's Charity Fund Run. It's a really awesome fundraising opportunity for a lot of our conservation orgs in the Jackson Hole area. Old Bill's Fund Run basically is set up that any donations made through the www.cfjacksonhole.org are partially matched through some supporting sponsors, and so it's a really good way to make your dollars to maximize your dollar donation to organizations like the Teton Raptor Center. So check that out if you get the chance as well. So yeah, with that, Bryan, let's get into it. Let's start talking golden eagles.
Absolutely.
So I guess a big question a lot of people have is how do you identify golden eagles?
Yeah, so one of I think the biggest things that I hear a lot is that golden eagles are bigger than bald eagles, and that's pretty much they're pretty much the same size. And that shocks a lot of people. I think golden eagles are much more powerful than bald eagles are, and they occupy different habitats most of the year. If you're looking to identify a bald eagle versus a golden eagle, what I would do first is associate where you are in your habitat. If you're floating down the river, if you're fishing near a stream and you see an eagle sitting above you, it's most likely a bald eagle, even if it's all brown, because young bald eagles are all brown. Whereas if you're driving across Wyoming in the Sagebrush Sea or up in the mountain ranges and you see an eagle fly over you, it's most likely a golden eagle. Young bald eagles, when you're looking at them, they take 5 years to get that white head and tail. And so the young ones have a lot of brown, but if it's mottled brown and white, so there's white speckling in the brown, it's a bald eagle. The young golden eagles also have brown and white, but they're really distinct patches. at the base of the tail and on the wrists of the wings. And so if they're really distinct white spots, then it's a young golden eagle.
So I was going to try and have some golden eagle photos to share, but I'm using my camera to share. Here's one I got on a fence post there.
So you can see that tail where it's that bicolored, distinct black and white. That's a young bird. And then the golden on the back of the head and down the nape of the neck, that's what gives the golden eagle its name. Those golden mantled nape feathers along the back of the head and the neck there. A beautiful photo.
Thanks. So that one was out in near Sheridan, Wyoming. They're widespread across the state. It was along a road. It had been scavenging a road-killed deer, and I was able to get a couple of photos of it.
Yeah, starting about now is when the migration kicks in. For the fall migration, we see a huge influx of eagles in Wyoming. Wyoming is arguably the most important area for breeding golden eagles in the continental U.S. And then we also have a huge number of thousands of eagles coming in from Alaska and all across northern Canada, central Canada, that winter in the lower 48, and a lot of them stop here in Wyoming. So that's one of the reasons why we're working on golden eagles here in Wyoming and Montana, is because we do have some of the best remaining habitat and trying to make sure it's safeguarded for the future.
Yeah, definitely. I love getting to watch golden eagles in the Jackson Hole area. I've seen nesting birds up in Yellowstone near the Slough Creek area. Also, it seems that we get a great increase in eagles during the fall and part of the winter season due to the abundance of elk and other animals that come into the valleys and are either harvested by hunters, and then there's gut piles left behind that both bald and golden eagles will scavenge, or animals that just kind of succumb to the elements, or unfortunately one of the other problems we have in Wyoming is roadkill, like the bird I was just showing you a photo of. So where are in the Jackson Hole area, kind of what are some areas you mentioned a little bit of the habitat. What are some areas that you like to kind of look for these guys?
Yeah, if we're in Jackson and we're in the valley and looking for golden eagles, the place I go to most is off the Refuge Road. There's a pair that hangs out a lot on Miller Butte, particularly in the spring, and you can generally see them most often just kind of flying around the western half of the National Elk Refuge. Also up in the Tetons, there's a few nests, and generally the foothills and up in the Grove on. So you want to be in the more mountainous terrain. Golden eagles, by far, I think, prefer to nest on cliffs. So they build huge stick nests, and their stick nest can be, a colleague of mine carbon dated a stick out of the bottom of this golden eagle nest on a cliff in Montana that was about 15 feet tall. And the bottom sticks out of that nest were over 900 years old. So every year they're just building and building and building and building. And if one of the pair dies, they'll pick up another mate. And it just keeps going over generations and even centuries. And even the old pictographs, the Native Americans in the Cody region, almost every pictograph you can find of golden eagle, there's a nest nearby. Wow. And so there's huge cultural importance for our native folks, and just amazing longevity of this species in the western U.S. They're dragons of the sky. It's amazing what they can do. Amazing the habitats they occupy, and flying in 100-mile-an-hour winds in the middle of a snowstorm as they're migrating. It's just unbelievable.
Excellent. Yeah, one of my favorites, and yeah, I definitely call them dragons. Most bird nerds will agree that birds are indeed dinosaurs, and we don't have proof that dragons existed. Golden eagles, in my opinion, are a type of dragon. They're just incredible predators of the sky. I actually have a pretty fond memory of this summer being on the Middle Fork of the Salmon River and seeing two golden eagles riding thermals along a cliff edge way above us above the canyon. And some of our friends downriver had also seen the eagles and noticed that there was a band of bighorn sheep On the ground below them, a bunch of ewes and lambs, and the bighorn sheep were bunched very tightly together, looking straight up at these golden eagles. Something that folks might be surprised to know is that golden eagles can hunt sheep.
Yeah, the golden eagles hunting is unbelievable. I think the first golden eagle nest I ever went into was on the side of Sheep Mountain. We just happened to find it because we were studying sage grouse at the time, and one of our sage grouse transmitters started transmitting on the side of the mountain. And I was like, well, that's clearly not grouse habitat. So we hiked up there to figure out what was going on and recover our $4,000 transmitter. And sure enough, it's sitting in a golden eagle nest. So I climbed up into the nest, and the chick was only about 3 days old, this tiny little white fluff ball, and found the grouse transmitter. But also, we went up there later to tag that chick when it was older, and there was a half a deer in the nest. The golden eagles had either killed a young deer or found a kill and actually flown with it up into the nest to feed the young. And a golden eagle weighs maybe 8-9 pounds, and that was probably 25 or 30 pounds worth of deer that it had taken up to its nest. The power those things have is unreal. And they hunt in pairs too. They're known to hunt in the middle of the night and hunt jackrabbits by the full moon. Just the gamut of what these things can do is crazy, and definitely much more powerful and amazing than some of our other raptors, though. You know, I have a hard time saying that being a raptor biologist, but they're right there up at the top. Yep.
They're a powerful bird for being, I mean, we think of them as being big, but at the end of the day, that's a lot of feathers and lightweight bones, but a very powerful and kind of adaptable animal in a lot of ways. So you mentioned a little bit about the migrations. Well, actually, first of all, thanks to everybody for joining and listening in on this. My name is Josh Metten with the Jackson Hole EcoTour Adventures. We're a wildlife tour company in Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks, and we're chatting with Bryan Bedrosian of the Teton Raptor Center about golden eagles. If you have any questions for us, please ask those questions. You can use the question mark sign next to the comment button, or you can just add them right as a comment. We'd love to hear from you if you have any specific questions about golden eagles or the Teton Raptor Center, or wildlife in the greater Yellowstone and ecosystem in general. We've been talking about golden eagles a little bit. One of the things that Bryan's done a lot of research on is migrations and where eagles go. We often see eagles in areas, but we might not know just how far they've come to get to the Jackson Hole Valley or wherever we're seeing them. So Bryan, tell us a little bit about how you do that research and what any cool insights you've gotten out of that.
Yeah, golden eagle migration is a phenomenon unto itself. You know, how these birds are traversing thousands of miles twice a year, and why and where they're going has been a mystery for decades. And only recently, when the transmitters have gotten small enough and use solar power and connect to the satellites, are we able to really track these birds and figure out what's going on. And so really the main reason why we want to know more about migration and what golden eagles are doing and the habitats they're using is because recently with the large push for alternative energy and wind farms, particularly in southern Wyoming where the wind is just unbelievable, they're running into some conflicts with eagles, and eagles are colliding with the wind turbines and causing some mortalities. And so the purpose of our work, and others as well, is to really ID where the critical migration corridor pinch points are, and so we can conserve those for the future. Because if you've got 1,000 wind turbines set up across a valley or a landscape, and you've got 3,000 eagles flying through there twice a year, you've got some pretty serious conflict. And so what we're doing is tracking individuals to help map out those critical migration corridors. So I've been working with some colleagues up in Montana, Raptor View Research Institute. If you don't know those guys, check them out. They're great. But we've been working on this since about 2006. I think we've been working on it slowly. More recently picked up a lot of steam with some support. And we're tracking about 30 individuals right now. And I just checked this morning, all of the transmitters that we put on the eagles are like backpacks. and they fit like a backpack. And they gather GPS points, and then they send them up to the satellites, and then we get essentially emails of where our birds are every 3 days. All of them are still up on their summer ranges. We've got actually one of the first known birds ever to breed up in the Arctic, where there's no trees, up in north by by Barrow, in some of those coastal floodplains up there. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, we sit on a mountaintop in the fall. To catch an eagle, we're sitting in 40 to 60 mile an hour winds, waiting for the eagles to kind of come down the ridge lines. They're using the updrafts, where they don't have to flap or glide, they just glide all the way from Alaska down to New Mexico. And then we set up some traps up there and hope to get lucky on a few and catch a couple to get some blood samples, feather samples, and get a transmitter and a band on them.
Amazing. That's crazy that there's one all the way up in the Arctic there.
We've got 3 on the North Slope now. We've got this guy that's been breeding there for the past couple of years, and then a couple that maybe their nests have failed, and then they went up to the North Slope and are maybe feeding on ducks or waterfowl up in that region.
Crazy. So switching over to waterfowl, everything from sage grouse to waterfowl to deer to bighorn sheep to carcasses, all sorts of things that these guys are going after to survive in this landscape. Yeah,
they love prairie dogs and ground squirrels. If they could be near a prairie dog town, they definitely will. I've been in some nests with up to 14 different antelope legs in and below the nest. So there's some that specialize in some pretty serious prey. These guys, anything they can, they're going to go ahead and try and feed their babies.
That's amazing. So in the fall, we start seeing those guys. You said they were still on their summer range, but they should start coming down here in the next couple months.
Really, a couple weeks, we'll start seeing our first birds come through. But yeah, and then migration will be done by the end of early November.
Okay, and are they spending? Do we have golden eagles that are kind of spending the whole winter in Jackson, or are they kind of spending part of the time here and then going further south, or what have you found out about where the southern extent of their range?
The general rule of thumb is in the lower 48 of the United States, if a golden eagle is breeding, it's going to maintain its territory year round. Mm-hmm. And then we have all of the northern birds from Alaska and Canada that will come down and add to our population and fill in those gaps as best they can and make a living in the winter. Mm-hmm. So we do have some that will make Jackson and the Jackson area their kind of home range for the winter. Others will wander across all of Wyoming. And so just right now we're working on a big project really trying to map out those critical winter habitats in addition to the migration routes, and just layering in, because it's really complicated when you talk about golden eagles, because they don't breed until they're 5 years old, and so you've got different age classes that have different needs. You've got the residents that stay year round. You've got subadults that were born here that stay year round but have to mix in with all the breeding birds, and then you've got all of those folks also coming in from the north. And so trying to figure out what's important for what segment of the population is pretty key for conservation.
That is something that I've definitely noticed over the years of guiding in the Jackson area in the wintertime, is we see what appears to be a pretty substantial increase of bald and golden eagles in the winter time. Do you happen to have any estimates as to how much of an increase in eagle presence that we have in the Jacksonville Valley in the wintertime?
Not for golden eagles, but for bald eagles. We did a study for years and looking at that increase in bald eagles here in the fall and in the winter. That was part of our study on lead ingestion and lead poisoning in eagles. Mm-hmm. And we also radio tracked and satellite tracked some of those bald eagles. And most of the bald eagles we see in Jackson in the winter are breeding up in Alberta and Saskatchewan and kind of the central area of Canada. So, and then the cool thing is, so I was pretty psyched about this. So we put on some radio transmitters on migrant bald eagles here in the winter. They came in, they were feeding on gut piles, getting lead poisoning. Then as soon as the hunting season's over, as soon as those gut piles dried up, they continued their migration south down to New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. And then in the spring went up and bred in Canada. The following year, they came right back to Jackson for just the hunting season, and then they continued on. So if you think about it, a lot of people think of like spawning salmon and eagles really taking advantage of that food resource, but gut piles are the same thing. And then as we know, both of us are big hunters and we do a lot of harvest for us and our families. When you have those gut piles, and if you're using a lead-based bullet, then we get into problems with lead poisoning of those scavengers, including eagles and ravens that are feeding on those gut piles. And so in the Jackson Hole Valley, with the bald eagles, we found that upwards of 2/3 of the eagles had lead and about 1/3 had poisoning levels during the fall hunting season. And similarly, in the fall, when we're catching golden eagles on migration, about half of those have noticeable lead levels that are above what should be normally there if they weren't eating any lead contaminated meat or anything like that. And the cool thing is we were able to give out free non-lead ammunition and reduced price non-lead ammunition, and the direct proportion that the number of hunters that used copper that dropped the lead levels in the eagle. So we know it works, and it's great. It's effective. I've been using it for over 15 years, every year harvesting an elk and antelope. So huge plug. If you guys are out there, hunters, you're a hunter, please use copper ammunition for the sake of the eagles, because when lead-based ammo does affect them, and non-lead ammunition does work to help reduce that. So just a little plug for the eagles.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's that's a kind of an amazing thing where it's like hunting is a really important part of the Western and especially the Wyoming culture. Something that a lot of people do to help feed their families. Something that, as you mentioned, both you and I participate in, and it's something that also helps feed eagles.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. It's really important for eagles. Young first-year golden eagles, when they leave their territory for the first time, all of a sudden they're going from Alaska to Wyoming. And they don't know where the food is. They don't know really how to hunt. And the survival rate of young golden eagles in that first fall and winter is really low. And gut piles really provide a really critically important food resource for them, because they don't rely on hunting. They can, wander over vast areas and find those gut piles, and it will sustain them as they're learning how to successfully hunt. So it's a good thing for the eagles, so long as there isn't lead in it.
Yeah, as long as they're not ingesting lead. So that's like a really good thing good easy thing that hunters can do to kind of help steward wildlife. In addition, and hunters have been the leaders in conserving our wildlife species over the last 150 years, and this is just yet another really easy thing that hunters can do to kind of help steward the other hunters that are out there, the golden eagles that are these fierce, amazing predators that we get to share this landscape with.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. I mean, I just, I like knowing that I can leave my gut pile and I'm feeding eagles. And I also like knowing I can leave my gut pile and I'm not potentially negatively affecting them.
Exactly.
And it's similar with roadkill. Roadkill, a lot of people think bald eagles are the main scavengers, but golden eagles do a lot of scavenging in the winter. And a lot of that comes in the form of roadkill. And we see a lot of roadkill deer and antelope here in Wyoming in the winter. Yeah. Those eagles are taking advantage of that food resource too. So it's hard, if you're driving across the country, you don't really want to stop, but I do often, and I pull those roadkill off the road about 100 or 200 feet, because we do see eagles getting hit by cars as they're feeding on roadkill. And so just removing it a little bit away keeps that food resource there for them, but makes the birds a little safer.
Yeah, that was something that I remember talking about with Becky from the Teton Raptor Center, is not feeding the highways. These animals are, when you see animals on the side of the road in the wintertime, there's animals coming in to scavenge on them, and figuring out ways to try and reduce roadkill, or as you said, move it further away from the roads can help protect these animals. One of the other, so in addition to doing all the research that you guys do at the Raptor Center, the Teton Raptor Center does raptor rehabilitation as well, and a lot of your patients are road strike patients. So
Yep.
it's always a really exciting thing when the Raptor Center can get an animal that was unfortunately injured in a road collision and can actually end up releasing it, and that does happen a good amount. But also, unfortunately, a lot of animals aren't unable to survive those collisions.
Yeah, and you bring up a solid point that is important. You know, I work for Teton Raptor Center as the research director, and we have a really strong research directive and research arm. We're doing 12 different projects simultaneously every year on multiple species in multiple states, but we also do rehabilitation and rehab over 100 injured, ill, and orphaned raptors every year. And then we also have over a dozen residents that we do education programs for, upwards of 30 or 40,000 people per year in our education programs. And having community support and support from folks through donations and old bills is really important for us in sustaining our programs. And it's really nice to have all three branches of research, rehabilitation, and education all tightly knit within the same organization. I'm privileged to be able to work here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why EcoTour Adventures has been we've loved being able to work with you guys and support you as one of our conservation partners over the years. So for everyone who's with us, in case you haven't been with us the whole time, I'm Josh with EcoTour Adventures. This is Bryan Bedrosian with the Teton Raptor Center. If anyone is interested in supporting the Teton Raptor Center, now is a really great time to do so. It's the giving period for Old Bill's Fun Run. You can go to www.cfjacksonhole.org and contribute to the Raptor Center and all of the other great organizations that are based here in Jackson. And those contributions are partially matched through co-sponsors. So it's a really good way to maximize your dollars. Bulldog Jim, thank you for your comment. He said he was blessed to view an eagle's nest and newborns during your last visit with us. We really appreciate that. Thanks again for that, for reminding us of that memory. It's a treat to get to see eagles on nests, and fortunately we've located a few of them in and around the Jackson and Yellowstone and Grand Teton area to be able to sneak looks in from a distance so the birds can continue to do their things and raise their offspring, but we can kind of take a peek into their lives.
Yeah, and it's been great to work with EcoTour Adventures, and as Josh mentioned, some of the proceeds from the trips have come towards Teton Raptor Center and other conservation organizations, and it's great to have a partner that invests back into the community and the resource. So thanks for that.
Yeah, you bet. Bryan, any other cool facts or things that you've learned about eagles? I guess another question I have is kind of what do you see for the future of golden eagles in Wyoming? And what do we need to do to kind of keep these amazing dragons around for the future?
Yeah, so I think a lot of folks, when they think about eagles, they think about bald eagles, and bald eagle populations are doing amazing right now, right? So after we got rid of DDT and a couple other habitat protections, bald eagle populations are on the rise, and people are fortunate enough to see new nests pop up all over the place in the Midwest and East Coast and everywhere. But unfortunately, the same doesn't hold true for golden eagles. At best, golden eagle populations are stable, but most of the golden eagle researchers out there agree that populations are on a slight decline right now. And so it's really important to get ahead of this. Golden eagles and bald eagles alike live for upwards of 30, 35 years. And believe it or not, so they don't breed every year. They are generally not successful every year. Sometimes their young die. They don't breed until they're 5 years old. So as a general rule of thumb, a golden eagle has to live and breed every year that it can after 5 years old until they're about probably 10 or 12 to even replace themselves.
Wow.
And so if you have any kind of mortality in that adult category after they have a territory, it's really detrimental to the population. That's why long-lived species like eagles and elephants and others with slow reproduction are at risk. So when we have additive mortality from lead poisoning, like we talked about, roadkill, wind turbine collisions, all of those things are adding up. And then you take into account habitat loss, and that's where our concern is. And so I mentioned earlier that Wyoming is the most important, or one of the most important areas for breeding golden eagles in the lower 48. And so conserving the population here is really, really key.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're doing everything we can and trying to chip away at some of those easier ones, like getting rid of lead, moving roadkill, to the more complicated ones of making sure wind farms are sited properly so we can get alternative energy, but also not put eagle populations at risk. So I'm fortunate that, or I'm hopeful that we're at least proactive enough, and
Yeah.
don't need to put them on the endangered species list, and that if everybody can kind of get on board now, I think we'll be great. And I'd rather be proactive than reactive when we're talking about any kind of wildlife management.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's why kind of your research is so important, because it's showing us where it's letting these eagles show us what's important to them on the landscape, because we have the amazing technology to be able to put a backpack transmitter on an 8-pound bird and allow it to fly around and show us where it needs to go and what's important to it.
Should we take a look at what one of those backpacks looks like?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I'm going to go over. I got a couple sitting on my shelf over here. A couple different kinds that I'll show everybody. And it's pretty amazing. This technology has only really come online in the past 10 years or so. As Josh mentioned, I tried my hand at making some for a number of years, and it turned out to be a lot more complicated than I anticipated. So this is a transmitter. It's got a little tape because the magnet's on there. That's the on-off switch. But these are the solar panels, and it sits on the back of the bird, just like a backpack would. And the solar panel charges it, and it gets GPS locations through the antenna once an hour. For upwards of, we've had transmitters on birds for now 7 or 8 years, and they're still going strong. And then it uploads the locations up to the satellites and then beams it back down to us. And each one of these, hopefully you can see this, I put elastic in this harness. So it gives it a little extra give. Imagine if you were wearing a backpack that was really stiff and you were trying to migrate 1,500 miles or walk 1,500 miles. You'd want a little extra give in there, just like your pants. So that's why we put that elastic in there. And then, so the transmitter's sitting on the back of the bird. 2 straps go above the wing, 2 straps go below. And then right in the center, I use cotton thread and just stitch it together with 2 stitches. And what that does is it allows the bird to be able to pick off that transmitter after a year, couple of years, and then the transmitter falls off, because an eagle lives for upwards of 35 years. And if this transmitter is only good for 4 or 5, we don't want it to be sitting on that bird forever.
Yep.
This is another version of that. This one's got a raised solar panel, so the feathers don't cover it, because if the feathers cover the solar panel, it's dead in the water.
Yep.
And so the other interesting thing that a lot of people like to know is these transmitters, these satellite-based transmitters, $4,000 each, plus about $1,200 a year just to get the data.
Yeah.
So it is not insignificant to try and track these birds. And as a scientist, we need to have a big enough sample size so we can catch the variation and what the migration looks like and what the winter habitat looks like. So you need a lot of these things out there, and it takes a lot of time and resources and support. But yeah, it's, we're fortunate to be able to do this, because trying it with old technology and following a bird in an airplane from Alaska to Mexico, that's just clearly not happening. So
yeah.
Yeah, and it makes for some really good outreach too. If you folks are interested in seeing some of these maps of where we go, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and we post where these birds are going all the time. We've got ferruginous hawks, short-eared owls, bald eagles, goshawks, and a bunch of other species that we're tracking. And so we send out updates all the time, and it's really, really fun to watch and follow these birds. So go ahead and give us a like, and you'll see some of these maps pop up from time to time.
You bet. Well, man, thanks for all of the awesome information today. It's just amazing, like what you're able to do with these GPS transmitters. I mean, it used to be, yeah, back in the day, putting little bands on them, and so it's amazing where we've come with getting to get into the secret lives of these birds that are kind of, despite all of the human developments all over the world, they're flying across these areas. I think that's one of my favorite things to think about when I see a golden eagle or other birds of prey like Swainson's hawks that are going thousands of miles each year on their migrations. They really connect this place. They connect the greater Yellowstone ecosystem to all these other landscapes, and kind of underscore the importance of thinking on a much more large landscape level. It's not enough to conserve Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks and the National Elk Refuge. We have to figure out where these animals are going when they're migrating, and make sure that those areas are also conserved as well. And having the good data that you all are able to create and analyze and report back on is really critical for the future of these and many other species.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think you mentioned Swainson's hawks, and that's the perfect example of why we're doing this. Swainson's hawks populations were crashing in the 90s. Some colleagues of mine tracked them down to the Argentina, and they found that pretty much every Swainson's hawk goes to the same region in Argentina where they were using this pesticide that was killing tens of thousands every year. Within a year, they got that pesticide out of circulation, and the hawk populations rebounded. Jackson, we've tracked osprey that breed in Jackson to Cuba, going across the Gulf of Mexico, which is nuts to me. We've got birds going, vultures and Cooper's hawks and other osprey going to Mexico, golden eagles going everywhere. Again, this is a global thing, and we see a bird in our backyard and we think that's it, but that's just a small piece of that bird's story.
Amazing. Well, I'm gonna leave a note in the comments here for how to support the Teton Raptor Center. Again, that's right now is the giving period for Old Bill's Fun Run, which is a matching donation. If you make a donation via the community foundation, it will be partially matched through a challenge grant, and that's a way to help support golden eagles, Swainson's hawks, all these other raptors, and the research that Bryan and the Teton Raptor Center are doing. If anyone else has any questions for us, again, please let us know in the comments, and we'll be reposting this video as well to our Instagram page, and so you can watch it later. Or if you really enjoyed this, please share it with your friends. We'd love for more people to see this and more people to learn about the Teton Raptor Center. So yeah, Bryan, any last thoughts here?
Thanks for watching, and raptors are just unbelievably amazing, and golden eagles are right there at the top of the list. Yeah,
and remember, they're dragons. We've got dragons flying around. We should keep them around.
We have dragons in our midst.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing some of you in the Jackson Hole area looking for golden eagles soon.
Great. Thanks, Josh.
All right. Thanks again, Bryan.